Hey everyone! Man, I really apologize for interrupting the captivating fulfillment going on. I just realized the stream unmuted after it switched over to mine. So, hi everyone. My name is Josh Foreman. I make a lot of stuff. Here's books that I co-author, and I do a ton of illustrations and stuff for them. So there's like 70 or 80 illustrations per novel. They're super fun if you like fantasy adventure. And I'm guessing, being a Reaper's miniature person, you probably do. Please check them out. They're on Amazon. I also make collectibles like this beautiful gold coin. For my books, it's a whole series. It's a big thing. And characters from the books as well. This guy is Skola. He can inflate like a puffer fish, and also extrude webbings from these little pores on his hands. He's got a lot of cool features. Today we're going to be doing ruins and rocks, specifically applying lichen. So last week we were working on this guy, adding stains and weathering, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So the next step to be applied to it is lichen. But we're going to do that on the base of it because that's already been clear coated, and that's a great way to do the stuff. You like Skola? Here's one of the fancy busts. I make busts of them that I then photograph and use as the book covers. So there's the cover model. This right here, actually this base that he's on, is also a book, technically. This is the kind of book that Tesla Deck use, and it's like a reel-to-reel scroll. So this would be a paper that goes along here that they punch holes into with their little sharp nails, and then they wind the reel to make the scroll go around and around. Anyway, that's something I invented and I'm very proud of. Okay, let's do some lichen. I'm liking it. At some point, I may be loving it. We'll see. Trademark pending. So we're gonna take this guy and we're just gonna fly it past like a Star Destroyer at the beginning of A New Hope. And it just keeps going and going and going. Okay, finally, it's gone. All right, this is the base of said tower. Oh, got all my stuff underneath it. It didn't make enough clearance. Now we have clearance. So this is, for those of you who haven't been following my Reaper streams, here's what's going on. There's the massive tower plugs in here, basically like a cartridge into the top of a console, right? And you put the dice in, they roll down, blah, 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 and then come out there into the little waiting pool for dice, as it were. And we've got this little operational gate. And the thing I really like about this is you can set house rules so that in the event that a dice can escape out of one of these gaps, then you get to choose the number that the dice will be. And so you could have one side open or both sides open or keep it closed. It's pretty firm, but I do feel like there may be a fluke, 1 in a million, that it could like hit it hard enough to get out. I've done a lot of test rolls, obviously, and I feel like dice escape maybe one out of every 50 rolls. So it's a pretty good ratio, I feel like, for having like super lucky crits, you know? All right. So I've done all the basing and dressing, you know, it's got all the little rubble and stuff. Well, I shouldn't say all. I still have to apply our little grassy grass boys, which I got a couple of these. I might as well just pop these on now, and then we'll do the lichen. I've got several of them packed into this little guy. I'm thinking I have a lot of browns mixed into my stains and stuff, so definitely going for more of the brown and deadish grass that has the brown base is probably the right way to go for that. At 55mm D20, yes. Just wrecking ball right through it. That's the way to go. And now some people apply these differently. I like to just stick them down and then I come back with a drop of PVA and just get around the base afterwards. You know, they have their little sticky base to begin with. It's so super convenient. I love these things as well. And now this is in sort of a, well, it's an underground arena, but there's a massive hole in the roof. So, but it is also like 200 feet up in the air. So there's going to be some amount of organic matter that falls down into here. Not a lot, but some. And so I'm just trying to, I'm feeling out where I want that ratio to be. Actually, this little corner here might be a really great place for, because it's always good to have variety. You don't want to get a monoculture going on with your grass. That might be a good place for that. Super easy, barely an inconvenience. Yes. Yeah, I like to, this one is a little less like, I shouldn't say less, the base is a little more organic and abstract. Like these ones are very much a dot, right? But for places where I want them growing out of holes and cracks and stuff like that, these are a little bit better. In some cases, it's like hardly worth the effort. Like I could just sprinkle in little bits, but it's like, yeah, I've already got this stuff out, so I shall continue to use it. So I haven't been keeping up super well. I'm curious, has anyone received their first shipment of Bones 5 yet, or are they still, because I saw it's on fulfillment day 4. I feel like at this point, someone must have actually gotten one. You know, someone who lives like next door in Texas or something, right? Go there. I have literally 12 different tweezers. Why I'm not using tweezers? Because I didn't have them in my hand yet. Instead, I'm fighting with my big sausage fingers to get these things in. It's like, why? Why fight it? Just get the pluckers, the old pluckers. Yes, that is the ever infuriating thing about a growing, you know, craft or whatever, is that you end up losing things, you buy more, you find the old ones, then you lose the old ones and the new ones, and then you buy more, and the circle of life continues forever and ever. Amen. Realized my camera is like a million miles away. Zoomed out. There we go. Speaking of. Oh, that's right. I turned off my cameras because here in the state of Washington, it got up to like 110 degrees for the weekend. And in western Washington, like on the Pacific coast, it is very unusual to get that hot. And as a result, no one has air conditioning. Well, very few people. I saw a graph that showed like the most, from most to least, percentage of air conditioner owners. Can you guess the highest ratio of air conditioned to non-air conditioned homes in a major U.S. city? I'll give you 10 seconds to give me a guess, and then I'll tell you. But I'll give you a spoiler. Number 0 on that list, least air conditioned, is Seattle. So we have like a little portable unit that we had set up in the living room, but man, it was still almost 100. It was upper 90s in our living room, and it would not cool down in the evening significantly, so going on very little sleep. It was no funsies time. Your mom's near Tacoma. Yeah. Yeah, if you could move in with someone, that was something that was happening quite a bit. People shuffling around for the weekend. The fever is broken now. It's back to our normal, like, mostly overcast, upper 60s, summer loving time. Oh, I forgot. Like, why did I get on that tangent? Because I was talking about my cameras were reset because I shut everything down out here in the garage because I have no heat or cold in this garage. And yeah, who wants your electric equipment exposed to 110 degrees while turned on? You know, it's not a good combo. Okay, so I'm seeing a guess for Dallas, someplace like Arizona. The actual answer, and this makes sense if you think about the humidity quotient, is the delta of the Mississippi River. New Orleans. New Orleans. That's number one. They're like 99.7% of homes have AC. I don't want to go too crazy with these grasses. As I was saying, I don't want this to feel like it's outdoors, you know. But also, the lichen is going to bring a little more organic life to this as well. Let's just make sure we've got... How did that tuft get out there? Well, it's going up here now. And actually getting some of these tuft styles close to each other helps to unify things. Okay. Now we're ready for painting some Lichen. .03 do the AC challenge. Really? Window units in Honolulu, not Central. Okay. Boom. Boom. I don't know what was going on. Oh, I think I was mixing clear epoxy in this cup last time. Not sure if I trust that cup anymore. It is now dubious. Grab another one. $75. That's about my perfect temp. If it could be 75 year round, and I like maybe 20% cloud coverage and a cool breeze, that's my perfect setting. I would be outside a lot more if life were like that. So I'm using very cheap paint, just whatever is off the shelf in a craft store or on sale. I actually I found a garage sale. I probably shouldn't be doing this right on the surface. I'm getting little splatters. I found a garage sale where I got a bucket load of these kind of just craft paints, and I'm almost sure they were from the 90s. And about half of them were still alive and kicking to some extent. So for this kind of particular thing that I'm doing, is perfectly fine. I would never do a miniature with that paint, but for something organic and messy like Lichen, it's great. The inside of my cap is clearly, this would explain the reason it wasn't squeezing out. But I'm going to take this whole chunk, even though there are dried bits in it and stuff. Still going to use it because it adds a little more noise, I would say, like visual noise to the system. There's going to be happy accidents that occur when you have very uneven paint. Again, depending on the application. Thanks, Alec. And then I'm also going to throw in some yellow and orange. And just kind of have it in general different area of my cup. If they mix together, it doesn't matter because they're going to be mixing together on the surface of the stone anyway. But those three flavors, because this is, like I said, kind of has a brown earthen coat, and it's sort of, or a brown wash, I guess you could say. Everything's unified around this general, like, gray, orange, yellow, brown, you know, orange and yellow and white kind of complement those things pretty well. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do is grab some alcohol. And for those of you who just joined, this is, this entire surface has been sprayed with, I believe I used, yeah, it's right here, actually. Army anti-Shane, not anti-Shane. Shane is my son, and I love him, and I'm not against Shane. This is anti-shine. Actually, I think I'm going to want more than this. And so what that is doing, and I just realized there's like everything's out of focus now. So since everything is covered in that, I can feel fairly safe adding, like over adding the paint that's going to be the lichen splotches. And then if I don't like them, I can dab them away like with 90% and it's fine. Sound off. How will you hear my beautiful, gorgeous, sexy voice? That's like the whole draw of this stream, I thought. All right. Here's the brushes I'm using. Fairly cheap, overly used brushes for this application. Let's see. Generally, when you're starting a process that you haven't done in a while, and you know it's been a couple weeks or months since I've done this last, and so there's a little bit of a few steps I may have forgotten, or techniques that I've developed, you know, because every time you do a thing, you're gonna pick up a little something. Well, I shouldn't say every time, many times. And so often those somethings get forgotten, and then you do the thing again and you're like, why isn't this as good as last time? And then it takes a little bit to remember. So I've got this pretty ugly back section. It's ugly because this whole thing is going to be like against a wall, so you will never see this area at all. This is pretty much just test area central, so just here for the sludge coating. So here's what I recall. I get a brush soaked in alcohol. This is 99% isopropyl. Really, any percent would probably be just fine. I'm going to pre-wet the area, and then just with that same brush, just go in. You can see it's loaded with pretty... Good job, camera. You're doing it. It's not doing it. There we go. Look at that. So nice splayed tips there. Just a specimen of a brush, really. But the good thing is it has lots of little splotchy splotches on it now. So when I go in and start dabbing it, just kind of rotate the brush a little bit as I put it on. And then I'll take a smaller brush with more of my alcohol and just kind of start tapping it around in areas, and that's going to sort of suck the pigments out into like tiny little capillaries between the alcohol and the surface, which spreads it out in what I think is a pretty natural way. And for the record, let's check out some reference here. So I always want to keep reference on hand. I'm trying to see if I have good lichen stuff. I mean, so this is covered with a lot of very green lichen. I'm not going with that color scheme, but it gives you an idea of the kind of like splotchy spread that I'm trying to achieve. Let's see, I don't have any here. Where's my lichen? Let's see, stone types carved, stone type color, stone types fitted, stone types mud brick, stone type cracks. Oh my god, here's flat, but I do not have lichen sheet. I'm not liking that. Alright, well, we're going, we're freehanding. Happy accidents shall abound. It's fine, I've done this enough where I'm pretty confident being able to get more or less what I'm going for. One of the things about lichen that's a little different is lichen itself is a symbiotic relationship between fungus that makes the little threads, and then what's the bacteria? Is it It's something I can't remember the other component of it, but it's two different organisms that live together. The organisms that live on the filaments of the fungus are actually doing photosynthesis to provide nutrients to the fungus, and the fungus provide the substrate essentially that the other component of it. Wow. Quick, someone do a Wikipedia on lichen. I'm going to go crazy if I can't remember the name of the other. And there's two possible ones too. There's two different kinds of that particular organism. Oh yeah, let's throw some of our orange and yellow on there too before we move on to the front. So I've got a little bit of yellow, and it also touched some orange, and that's cool. And also, the more alcohol you put down first, the more kind of subtle and feathered the edges of these little stains are going to be. I'm not looking for super bright or saturated spots. Shadow of the Colossus in general is a very desaturated game. I think I probably haven't mentioned this on today's stream, but this is architecture from the Shadow of the Colossus. I'm building a giant diorama for the Colossus. Here's the head of which I built. He stands about 4 feet tall, and so the diorama that I'm building around him is 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide and 8 feet deep. So it's practically a room that I'm building for him. And this dice tower, there's a pillar in the middle. So the answer is orcs. Wrong. That is not the symbiotic organism that lives on fungus to create lichen. I'm sorry, I'm detracting 10 points from your score. Alright, so now I'm going to start applying it around this corner here. Again, this is still kind of the back-ish area. And now I have paint, gunk. Yeah, paint is a kind of gunk, right? On this brush, and I don't care. I'm just going to dip it full on in the alcohol and just kind of blob it around in places. So my point with actually talking about the reality of what lichen is because knowing that it actually is a utilizing sunlight for its nutrients, that helps you understand that it is not typically in the little cracks and crevices. It can be, but more frequently it's on just the flat surfaces of rocks and ruins and stuff like that. So I would not be dabbing it like up in behind these little spiky bits. You know, it just wouldn't tend to live there. And because my brush was so full of alcohol, it's now deposited a white line along there, which I do not want. Cyanobacteria, thank you. And a scomoxete fungus. You know, leave it to someone named Dirt Diver to know this sort of thing. Okay, so I'm just rinsing this out a little bit. I think I probably should just paper towel dab it away. Right. Anyway, so it's reminding me, oh yeah, the reason that I don't want to just soak an area and start applying my lichen color is because it wicks the lichen into the little cracks where lichen is actually less likely to be. So when I want to apply my alcohol more judiciously in just the areas that I want it. And again, I'm thinking of sunlight here, like where is sunlight likely to hit? Not in the, again, if you look at reference, this stuff grows everywhere, but it's more likely to be in the big open flat areas and where some sunlight can hit. So I'm being a little kind of overly pokey and careful with it right now because I'm just getting back into the swing of things after having not done this for a hot minute, as the kids say. It's been a hot minute. Escamicids equal oscamids, the giant round fungus monsters in D&D. That is very likely. I could ask my friend Jeff Grubb, who worked on Dungeons and Dragons during, I think, the late 80s into the late 90s, and he invented a crap ton of the monsters for D&D. He actually, think of it, you may notice on the back of my book, The Scarred King, available on Amazon, here's the guy right there, Jeff Grubb, author of The Brothers' War and a million things for Dungeons and Dragons. Saying my book is great, so you can believe that it's a great book if someone who worked on Dungeons and Dragons thinks it's a great book, right? That's how that works. You're gonna 40. You know, on my personal stream, I have a German friend who keeps trying to get me to say German things, and because German just always sounds angry to me, I typically like shout the words to attempt to emulate my perception of German language better, and it's good times for all until I accidentally shout too loud and it blows out the mic and hurts everyone's ears. So just be warned. If your Lichenopedia gets too extreme, ears may be hurt. There she is. Hi, Indivies. That's true. I do sometimes say it correctly. Now remember that big chunk, that plug of paint? It's very blown out on the camera. Trust me, there's a big chunk of white paint in here, and I'm just kind of stabbing at it, and it's like, whatever. Like, one thing that I had not actually stopped to think about today, I thought about it earlier and then immediately forgot about it, was storytelling-wise, when did this pillar collapse? Right, so there's 4 pillars on this thing, and I decided one of them should be collapsed, just to add a little fun variety in there. And who doesn't love Rubble, right? Specifically Barney Rubble from the hit 90s movie that they turned into a cartoon from the 60s, The Flintstones. Right, so when did this break? Did it break after most of the lichen had grown on it? And now it is sitting there with lichen on the sides, but it would not have the lichen growth where it had broken away. Honestly, I don't know how long it takes lichen to grow on things. I'm guessing because it's fungus related, it's probably pretty darn quick. But it's less about like the precision of your environmental storytelling and more about what people are going to perceive about it, right? Because like me, I'm guessing 99% of the population has no idea about the details of the cyanobacteria and other elements of lichen. But they have lots of reference stored away in their head from movies and TV, and if they're lucky and live in Europe, actual castles and ruins. And who knows, maybe the side of their cottage is even covered in lichen, or their garden fence. And yeah, so they'll have kind of an intuitive sense of lichen distribution and the age. Millimeter a year. Is that spreading outward? I assume that doesn't mean going upward, because a lot of lichen is like paper thin, like a wafer, an after dinner wafer. Okay, I'm gonna break down and actually get a separate application brush for the alcohol. And again, this could be anything. This is a super garbage brush in diameter. That's interesting that it grows so slowly. I would not have anticipated that, but thank you for finding that out for me. Okay, so if I'm unhappy with how splotchy and bright this is, which I'm not at this point, but if I was, as you can see, because it's got the clear coat on it, I can almost erase it. Now, I do think I'm starting to scratch through the coat a little bit, and this is a particularly scratchy brush, but it's also doing a good job of scrubbing the lichen. So you can see it's kind of merging the staining that I had here, and the base, or not the base coat, but the sludge coat, really, and the dry brushing. It's kind of merging them all together, which is not good or bad. It's just kind of what happens. So I can re-clump over that. Or just leave it as an anomaly. You may have noticed with all that reference that I showed you that basically ruins are a big mess of anomalies. There are general patterns you can pick up on, but there are always just weird things that I don't know how to explain. Like, why is this stain here? Why is this one rock way darker than all the other rocks around it? You know, that sort of thing. And I really wish there was a way to get, maybe it's the angle, but doing the white on here is just not super great for this camera. Let's do a little bit of orange speckles in there now, keeping those fairly minimal. Oh, that's crustose lichen. Others grow 500 millimeters a year. Depends on the. Okay, that makes sense. And there is almost the full rainbow available to you when you're doing your lichen. It's usually there's a much smaller spectrum of colors in any given location. You know, you're not going to have 5 different colors of lichen on the same rock very often. You know, anytime you say a rule like that, there's you're going to find exceptions to it. But in general, it's going to look weird if you apply more than 2 or 3 colors to a bit of ruins. The pale green that you see on trees, okay, lichens that look like moss can grow much faster. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating when you think about how pervasive lichen is. Um, I believe it's one of those organisms that can be found everywhere, including Antarctica. And the fact that it seems to be so plug and play is probably vital to that. You know, the fact that it can be multiple different species or organisms working together using essentially the same mechanism of one creates a substrate and the other provides nutrient. Okay, so I like, um, again, based on my experience looking at reference, I like that there are patches where it's a lot more white with just a little bit of orangey yellow mixed in, and then another area where the proportions are much different. That's something that you see a lot. So for my final trick, I'm gonna throw a little bit of yellow in there, and sometimes I'll even go as far as adding little bits of black here and there. But when your ruins are already like very desaturated and in the gray spectrum as opposed to being, you know, browns or yellows or whatever, um, I find that doing the black lichen is almost like redundant and pointless. It just doesn't. It doesn't pay for the amount of time it takes to apply it. So I like applying these little drops of alcohol around the edges of my big blobs of paint. Let's see how close can we get to this? Yeah, so this is a fairly big drop of paint. It's got a lot of volume in it for its size. And what I'm doing is I'm applying alcohol to the periphery of it and then waiting to see how the alcohol sort of erodes away at that drop, because it will often pull it in interesting ways that keep it from being just like a circular spot. Ooh, if I cover that light, you can see that so much better. Let me redirect that light. Better, that's better. All right. We're gonna work in the shadows for a little bit. Oh man, I miss What We Do in the Shadows. Such a good show. Great movie. Great show. I assume there's another season coming, but you know, COVID wrecks a lot of things. Yeah, the more I can cover the light with my body, the better you can see what I'm actually trying to do here. And conversely, the worse I can see it, but that's all right. This is not like painting a cornea on a mini. This is very natural and organic and very open to happy accidents. See that? So, like, I erased away behind that yellow because it was seeping over everything, like, very evenly. Is the camera just continually, like... Yeah, I know there's a way to lock in the thing, but I'm not technically inclined enough to know how to do it quickly. So anyway, yeah, bringing in these different modulated tones, one right next to another, usually gives you a pretty good look. And again, I don't want to do a thing where there's always like a white outer ring and then a brighter like color inner ring. I want to keep it pretty randomized, which is surprisingly hard for a lot of people, myself included. Like, your brain tends to want to break things into easily repeatable systems that you could call a heuristic. And once you've developed that heuristic, it's just a real brain labor saving device for your brain to just like revert to that. So you do one thing that looks good to you, and then your brain is like, okay, shut off and do other things, or just stop thinking and just keep repeating that same procedure over and over. And that's something that you need to fight if you're trying to make stuff seem organic. If you're making something very industrial, then that's actually probably a good thing. You want to lean into that, but so this texture on these particular bricks, I have just never been happy with. I meant to sand them down quite a bit more, but haven't got around to it. It looks too much like a surface texture that you would get from applying whitewash or the daub in Wattle and Daub. What am I thinking of? What is that white stuff that chips off of things? Wow, my brain and words today, you guys. Not having a great time with brain and words. Anyway, that's what it looks like, is plaster. I was gonna say, that's what it looks like. It's plastered over this. Yes, literally the word I was looking for was plaster. Anyway, this does not convince me that this is stone. So this is a great place to just pile on the lichen, because again, when I look at my reference, there are places where the lichen has gone ham, gone off the rails. It's just like, we're taking over this joint. Ain't nothing you could do about it, buddy. And so this is a good spot to put that, and that will just completely cover up all my sins. I am now forgiven and will spend eternity in paradise because I used enough alcohol and lichen. I think it says that in the Bible somewhere. Okay, so this is spread out a lot more than I necessarily want, but very easy to fix. Just gonna wipe off most of that orange. Give myself some cleaner white. Oh, that orange is just going everywhere. You know, if I'm serious about having more control, I'll put these colors in different cups or on a palette, of course. But it's just so convenient to have everything in a one-stop shop, you know, that you could just have in your other hand or right next to you, wherever it's going. Moss and lichen together. I'm not sure that... I know they're often together on organic surfaces like wood. I am not sure that moss and lichen are actually that often together on stones. You could be right about that, but that's not my impulse. I have added bits of grass and stuff inside the detritus here and there. I don't really have a moss method that I'm happy with yet. And the fact that this is underground in a, you know, fairly enclosed environment means that I wouldn't lean heavily on the moss anyway. Yeah, exactly. A lot of lichen is easily confused for moss, especially the really the longer stranded stuff. Oh, again, I put on too much alcohol, and now I've got this. Well, I did not put on too much alcohol. I dabbed the alcohol on with a brush that had some paint already loaded on it, so it naturally seeped into that seam. And as we've established, lichen doesn't necessarily like to be inside cracks. It likes big open spaces. Well, I will just go on the record and say that before I did a lot of research, I did confuse moss for lichen all the time, or vice versa. I thought a lot of stuff that I was looking at and thinking was moss actually is lichen. But what it comes down to, the brass tacks are when you're making terrain for your minis, for your battle table, it doesn't matter what the theory behind the thing you're looking at is. It just matters that it looks right, you know. Knowing about the properties of the thing you're trying to emulate can help you make more educated extrapolations if you don't have very good reference for the thing you're trying to build or recreate. But it's not incredibly useful when it comes to just making something that feels right, you know. It's all about them feels, man. Well, I wouldn't say no one cares about the science. I care about the science, but I'm a weirdo, so. And I know there are other weirdos out there as well. Weirdos who try to hold 3 paintbrushes at the same time, like a champ. Weirdos like us. At least I'm not a brush licker weirdo. If that, you know, if you're gonna rate your weirdo level, I don't lick my brushes, so I've got that going for me at least. That's what gets me in at all the coolest nightclubs. I let them know that I do not lick my brushes. Alright, I simply need more white. This is what I'm running into right now. I'm being too lazy to just stop for a second and get more white. I know, you would think, how is it possible Josh could get any more white? But believe me, I can get more white. And I'm going to put it in a special, separate but equal container. Right. So many of my paints are decade plus old. And then I always forget to just like keep an inventory, make a list, and know exactly what I need to get more of. All right. That'll do, donkey. Okay. And I'm going to get a special white poker. Trying to find something that's pretty good and very messy. This is a good one. Looks like a witch's broom. But that lets me tap out very nicely randomized specklies. Okay. I would love to see a picture of moss and lichen together. I am a massive reference collector. Terabytes of the stuff. Plus, I started collecting reference books in my late teens, early 20s. So throughout the 90s, anytime I went to a brick and mortar bookstore, well, wow, really 90s, probably all the way up to 2010 is when I started to curb it, as it became more and more apparent that Google was just way more efficient at this. But anytime they had the bargain book shelves, you know, with big old beautiful reference books of things, I would buy all of them. Well, not all the books there. Every book that was like that, one copy of it, that's what I would buy. All right, let me check this out. I think I agree with you that the dark green stuff is indeed moss on the left, but the green stuff on the right, the lighter green stuff, I think that is still lichen. But I think we're all in agreement on that. Oh, we have multiples here. Okay, and so here's on roof tiles. Okay, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think this is one of those things where, because lichen is practically everywhere, moss is not as everywhere as lichen, but if there's lichen, there's also likely to be moss. I think maybe that's the rule that I kind of have in my head. Yeah, lots of different species, but with lots of different textures. But there's also very the tones, the color tones are still a fairly smaller spectrum than you would think, given how many different species are all like packed in there, you know. I'm going to do some more kind of dot redistribution. That's how I'm going to say it as an American. Redistribution of these white specks. Just trying to build a lake of alcohol around it. You get a slightly different effect when you do this as opposed to putting down a lake of alcohol first and then adding your little droplets. We'll try that next and see it. And also these droplets have had a little while to dry while I was looking at that beautiful reference, which I really appreciate. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. It's always very inspiring to see that stuff to me and to think, ooh, how can I reproduce that? Yeah, very rare that you only find one kind of lichen in one spot. I think probably because, like I said, this stuff is very versatile, and so if there's an environment that is amenable to it, they're gonna jump on that. And so another thing is that um, often lichen will follow a path of water, but also sometimes the path of water actually excludes lichen from it. So here's an example of where you've got, you know, obvious water stains running very vertically, and you can see areas where it looks like almost algae bloom. Maybe bloom is not the right word, but algae. Um, but it is probably lichen. And then areas where it's followed the drips down, but then you have other areas where it seems like the drips have excluded lichen. Like maybe there's just like too much water, or the pH balance in the minerals of that rock aren't as conducive to the growth of it. Yeah, in a really wet area like that, it totally could be algae. And so in a place like this, I'm imagining quite a few. Oh, sorry. Let's focus. I'm imagining quite a few areas where you'd have stagnant pools of water. When water drips down, it would sit there until it evaporates away. And so you sometimes end up with these interesting sort of rings of lichen around that. So, this sort of a thing where the water sits at the bottom and pools there, and then the lichen grows around that, and probably grows in between when there's water there, and then the water kind of kills it when it's pooled. Again, these are theories piled on theories, piled on yet more theories. The black is mold. Might be inhibiting the lichen growth. Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that, but which is extra ironic since I just had a home inspection on a new house we're looking at to buy, and one of the things that always comes up, especially in the Pacific Northwest, is black mold. By the way, if you want to add a lot of stress to your life, I highly recommend trying to buy a house in this market. It's a fantastic way to feel really stressed and miserable all the time. Specifically in the Seattle market right now, I mean, I know every market has its challenges, but we have these three competing forces. We have a ton of millionaires who already live here from the tech industry, from Microsoft, Facebook, Google, they're all up here, Amazon. Um, so you have all these like super rich people. That's always been the case. Oh, at least for the past 40, well, I guess 30 years really. Um, and then, Boeing as well. And then on top of that, you have a mass exodus out of California of millionaires that are just happy to come up here and buy up everything they can. And then on top of that, you have this massive Chinese investment strategy that's been going on for the past decade or so. It's just been expanding over time, where I don't know if it's like the government proper of China, but some parties, that are part of a grand strategy. I'm not talking conspiracy here. This is well known in the financial world. They're just buying up as much real estate all over the world, and the west coast of the United States is one of those strategic strongholds where they're doing that. So I'm competing with the Chinese government and two different sets of millionaires. And believe it or not, painting dioramas and terrain and stuff has not made me a millionaire yet. I don't know why. It's kind of a weird phenomenon, but something has kept me from being a millionaire. I can't put my finger on it. So yeah, buying a house here, very, very, very stressful. Used to live in Seattle, Dirt Diver? Holly, you bought a house in Kent. We were looking in Kent. Yeah, it is worse than last year. I mean, interest rates are super low, which is awesome. But that also means that everyone is in the mood to buy. And, oh boy. The neighborhood that we currently live in, we're getting kicked out of our house essentially because we've been here for over 15 years, but our landlord has like a brother-in-law who just had a baby and they're on the verge of homelessness, and so he's like, I gotta do this. He's really bummed about it, but he has to let us go at the end of our lease. And yeah, so we were like, oh, of course, now is the now is when we have to find a house. We could continue to rent, but the problem is our landlord was like really likes us a lot. We're just kind of the model tenants. We don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't have pets, we don't have young children. We have an auto pay system for our rent, so we're like the easiest tenants you can possibly imagine. And so I think as a result of that, he kept our rent far lower than the market value, because every place we've looked at to rent in our area is a good like $1,000 to $1,500 a month more than what we're paying here. So I don't like, he may have been like actually at a net loss given that fact. I don't know, but I guess he's going to be more at a loss if he's practically giving it to his brother-in-law. Anyway, yeah, and we have to stay in this area because my wife has a degenerative disease and requires a lot of different kinds of specialists, which it's taken 15 years to build up our health network, essentially, which is, the way I describe it is like, specialists in general, they're like super specialized, and as a result, they don't know much about overall things. So like a heart specialist is hyper focused on a heart, a lung specialist hyper focused on lungs, digestion, blah blah blah, all of these things, right? But because Heather has EDS, it's a disease of the basically connective tissue, and everything in your body, all your systems are essentially work through connective tissue. So when your connective tissue is diseased, you have like just problems in virtually every system of your body. And so the task of finding doctors who are both curious and compassionate enough to spend the extra time necessary to kind of understand what EDS does, is one thing, and to like connect and communicate with other medical professionals in their different fields, that's really hard to find. So it's like, it's easy to find a medical network that has a lot of good specialists who are good in their field. It's very hard to find ones that will connect. So it's like you've got all these random nodes, but anytime you can connect the nodes, even partially, your network becomes much more powerful. And so that's what we've been building over the last 15 years. So we need to be close to this area. and actually we're kind of tied to Bellevue because that's where her physical therapist is. Very few physical therapists are good with EDS patients, and the further she drives after her physical therapy, which she needs at least once a week, it basically undoes the effects of the physical therapy the longer she's in the car afterwards. So it's like we've got all these like stipulations about where we can live, and then on top of that, it's like, man, I really don't want to give up my garage. Like, I'm doing more and more dioramas and stuff, and the size required is just, you can't do that in an apartment. Couldn't deal with the yuppies and pseudo peaceniks. I had to go back to the East Coast. Okay. Pseudo peaceniks. How dare you, sir? How dare you, sir or madam? How dare you? The West Coast is wonderful. I'll tell you what. I love it here. Except for real estate. Yeah, that's pretty much the case. The banks are the landlords now, for sure. We could only afford to put down, technically, we could afford to put down 10%, but that would pretty much completely wipe us out. So we're not really comfortable with that, so we're doing 5%. So it's like, yeah, it definitely doesn't feel like home ownership at that point. It's just, now we owe another entity a lot more money for a long, long time. Okay, I think this is really awkward to do for the camera, so I might as well just move to this part. Don't buy, don't buy, don't buy! Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where because the market inflation happens so fast, being able to save our way into retirement is not really an option. Again, I'm not poor, but I sure ain't wealthy, and I didn't really get started on saving until my 40s, and that's just way too late. So we're definitely stretching ourselves, and we're going to be very house poor for a while, but hopefully that gets our foot in the door to be able to actually have a retirement plan, because before this we didn't really have one. I've got like a bit of a 401k that would maybe last a year or two, and just recently started a Roth IRA, I think is what it's called. I hate money. I hate everything about it. I hate thinking about it. I hate dealing with it, and it really shows in our financial security. It's it is not great. The average Seattle person you ran into was a yuppie or a pseudo beatnik. Okay. Wait, did you say beatnik or peacenik? I think you said peacenik. That sounds right. We are certainly quite the liberal bastion up here. Portlandia is more of a documentary than it should be. You're as liberal as you can be. So That's the significance of using the word pseudo, I assume. Is you're saying they're not real peaceniks. They just talk the talk but don't walk the walk. Oh, right. Yes, we shall stay away from politics. I always think of it as more of like a cultural, like interesting cultural thing. But yeah, I forget that it can quickly turn ugly. Not as ugly as moss and lichen mixed together, but you know, ugly nonetheless. You hear pseudo instead of. Well, how do you pronounce pseudo, Indivies? The P is definitely silent. I know that. When I first encountered the word, I thought it was pronounced pseudo. Yeah, our mortgage is definitely more than rent, which was already going to be bonkers of a stretch. And it's even a stretch beyond that. But the only reason we could do this is because Heather's folks are getting up in age, and her dad has Parkinson's, and it's kind of a known inevitability that they're going to need to full-time care. And probably between that stage, it would be great if they could live with us. And this place has like a full kind of downstairs that they could live in pretty comfortably. So they'll be able to bring some of their, you know, income, their fixed income, obviously retirement stuff, and help with the monthly payment of the mortgage. And then my brother is living with me as well, and so he pays a little bit of rent. Yeah, it's definitely not one of those things where we could just be like, this is our own little home now. It's still a community affair. Yeah, it's dealing with aging parents is its own ball of wax. It's I'm kind of like extra prepared because Heather, you know, my wife, who has degenerative disease, like we're very familiar with a lot of the trials and tribulations of dealing with the medical system and special care and that kind of stuff. So we've got some practice. I think we'll be all right. Little. I hate it when the my cut or tearing has actually made a little sort of dog ear poke out of the side. Hotel Foreman, that's right. Feel free to stop on by Trasherama. We could use a little more trash. So I think I'm going to try one of those sort of drippy lines of lichen, see how I like it. Especially since I'm not particularly happy with the seam between these rocks anyway. It's another way to hide things you're unhappy with. Let's see. MQs. What do I do with them? Most of the stuff that I've made so far isn't this big, so I just have a variety of shelves and stuff back here full of sculptures and art and various things that I've done over the years. Yeah.
Where's that journal you drew all the stuff in, and also where's the tape measure?
It's on the AC, both of them. This diorama stuff, I'm planning on probably repurposing a lot of it just to be a background. I do YouTube videos, and so it's nice to have, you know, fun stuff in the background. And the big kind of room that I'm building for the Colossus, I'm building it specifically in sections. So you can see there, behind that, there you go. Behind that pillar there is a like chunk of wall, and there's going to be 4 or 5 of those. So that just will just be nice to have a just a cool wall, like ruined wall background, you know. After I dismantle it. Essentially, I built a frame for the diorama room, and those walls are going to like slot into it or hang off of it. And then when I'm done doing the photo and video shoot for the Colossus, I'll deconstruct it and repurpose. The frame is just like really cheap, flimsy wood that I'll just be able to use for other purposes. Yeah, so the staining stuff that I see, I feel like Dirt Diver, you're right that that's probably more mold, which means it's probably almost always going to be darker. So stains of light stuff. I'm trying to. I don't know what happened to my reference specifically of lichen and stuff, but yeah, and I feel like that stuff is probably more algae or mold. Um, Yeah, I think I just like where you see the brighter stuff. It's almost like camouflage, the way it's just like plastered over in really randomy size areas. Life size wizard's tower. Yes, life size for a mouse. Exactly. So I'm gonna get a little more camo-y with it and less like it's been drawn down by the water, I think. Yes, Lord Dave, this is all 100% scratch. I actually have a video that should be coming out tonight, if not tomorrow, on the Josh Foreman YouTube channel that goes through the entire construction of it. So please check that out and subscribe if you want to see the process. And I've also been working on this quite a bit on the Reaper streams as well. So I'm here every Wednesday at noon Pacific, 2 Central on, what are today's? Today's are Thursdays, on Thursdays. Awesome, thank you, Lord Dave. Yeah, I'm actually recording this for the very last segment of the YouTube video. I hope to get edited and finished tonight. We'll see. I have not missed putting out a video on the 1st of every month for many years. And I would hate for this to be the year that I miss it, but sometimes life happens, you know. You gotta buy a house. You spend an entire night in the ER with your wife. What else has happened to me lately? I guess really that's the big parts that have set me back a bit. Lord Dave, do you use XPS foam a lot, or do you do 3D printing of it, or other? Always curious how other terrain builders approach their work. No, this is my. It's not for water, it is for dice. This tower is going to be a dice tower, so that is the actual tower that sticks on top of this base. So pretty large scale stuff. I also have this mountain here that's going to be part of the diorama as well. Again, I've got YouTube videos and all that stuff. I'm going to try to get a little more slapdash with it at this point. I think I've built up my muscle memory for it. I can just really slather it on now. Oh, which reminds me, let's see, so one of the things that I'm remembering is that when I'm applying the alcohol, like pre-applying the alcohol, just tapping it on the surface so that very little of it goes down into the cracks is a good way to do that. That way when you start blobbing on the color, it's not getting wicked down into the crevices. Slapdash is too fancy a word for Trashorama? I would think that'd be one of the main words you use. That, like, fits your name aesthetic perfectly. I would, like, your name, I make associations with things like shenanigans, slapdash is a good one. There's something else that sprung to mind. Rabble rousing seems like a good one too. I'm just saying, consider adding these to your common lexicon. Nope, that's not the right brush. Got 6 different brushes I'm trying to hold at the same time. Fancy $2 words. These words can still be found in a dumpster. Come on, they're not that fancy. They're not like $10 words. Good question. Rubbing or denatured? Is there a difference? It's, isopropyl. I don't know if that is one or the other, to be honest. Same stuff I use for cleaning my 3D prints. Oh, got out of focus. Focus. That's rubbing alcohol? Okay. All I know is that it tain't drinking alcohol, okay? Don't drink it, kids. Oh, well, yeah, look at the time. We're at our 1:30 mark. So I'm assuming what's happening is we're going back to the fulfillment stream. But let me do my final pluggable plugs. Books. They're fun. Fantasy adventure novels. I co-create them with my co-author, and they have a ton of art that I've created in them. They're available on Amazon today in physical book, paperback, and ebook. I do lots of sculpting and character painting. I've got a YouTube channel. All my socials are up there. Instagrams, Twitters, etc. The only thing I'm not on is TikTok. I apologize. I can't do another one. I just can't. Collectible coins. They're fun. They're cool. Yeah, my YouTube videos are usually about sculpting or like just nerd art in general. Obviously, I do a lot of terrain and that kind of stuff too. So there we go. Okay, I think I've done my whole spiel. Let's go back to the warehouse, shall we? Assuming that's where we're going. Or maybe we're raiding. I don't know. But we'll do a thing. I'll see you guys later. Bye. I'm just going to paint this out. It is a cool adjustable arm.